Today on the Mr. Maple Show podcast, Matt and Tim talk to maple expert Emery Davis.
Welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Matt. I've got my brother Tim. We're joined by Emery Davis today. We're really a real big honor to have you on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. It's been a long time since we've known each other, I guess. And
yeah, we've been Facebook friends for quite a while. It seems like a meeting in person's overdue. It's been a minute.
We've been corresponding, sharing information, sharing other things. So it's really cool to actually, essentially for me to meet you face to face. Even though I couldn't make it to the Maple Society meeting years ago across the pond, I'm excited that, here we get to meet you now.
Well, I hope you guys are going to be at the Valley Forge meeting, actually, because I am coming over for that one. And I'm not sure if there's a planned visit to you guys or not, but I'm hoping there is. I know we have a couple of good Arboretum visits, and we're going up to see our mutual buddy Ed.
Nice,
Ed Shin. So I'm hoping that we're going to get by with you guys. But you know more about that than I do. So.
Oh, well, when it comes to the Maple Society, this was something where Matt and I we got so involved with it for quite a while that when our business took off during COVID, we kind of had to, hand it off and pass it off for other people to handle things while we were managing more aspects of our business. And
right.
And then we bought Buckholtz Nursery, and at some point we'll probably get back involved with the executive board of the Maple Society, but we just had to take a short break.
Well, we miss you guys, but I'll tell you what, we all admire, honestly, I'll throw a little flattery your way, but we all admire how, what you guys have done and how successful you've been. And, also on the social media side, I got to say, I look at your website all the time. I mean, I'm sitting here in France, so it's not like I can order anything, but it's just a great website. It's one of the great resources that we have as the Maple Society and as anybody, on the web. So heads up and kudos for that.
Oh, that's greatly appreciated. And we really appreciate, the Maple Society has been a great part of Tim and I's growth. So we're big proponents of the Maple Society. Really made a big change in our lives. Frank Biles told us you need to get your behinds out here to the Maple Society around 2008. And I think Tim and I traveled out for the first time in 2009 to Oregon to that first Maple Society meeting. I've only missed one since. I'm not sure about this year. I know I'm planning on doing the next year, 2025 in the UK. So my wife will not let me miss that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in because it's actually listed wrongly. It's actually in 2026.
Okay.
In the UK. So that gives you more time to buy your ticket in advance and get a good deal.
Hey, Sean, that may mean Japan in 2025. What do you think, buddy?
That sounds good. My son has a job working for a company in Nagoya, so I'm just waiting to go in with a trip for him to get out there next time. But yeah, so it is in 2026, and we'll definitely look forward to seeing you there. We actually have a fantastic meeting. That's going to be at Westonburg, the National Arboretum, which is you guys have been to, I guess. And,
I went in I forget which year the meeting was in Brussels, but I went and spent some time with Peter Gregory, and was just such a cool time to go. I got to go to Westonburg with him and Hugh Angus, which was like a pilgrimage kind of deal for me. That was such a cool thing to get to go there with the two of them. That was really special.
I was still in college at the time, so unfortunately I didn't get to go. So I'm just like biting at the chops to get to go now. I'm like, I got to see this place.
we're going on the 18th. We have a really nice meeting set up. We got a class in the morning, and then a private tour with Dan Crowley, who's the conservation manager. Hugh's retired now. He was the curator there.
Dan's brilliant. I've met him several times at different international events. He's quite the species enthusiast, and that guy's an encyclopedia.
He is. We went on a couple of garden tours with him earlier. So anyway, I'm really looking forward to. I can't get up to every meeting, because life intervenes. But this one is a must. So we got 2 days. I'm bringing my dog. Most of the garden is open to dogs. There's only one place, and Hugh is bringing his dog.
Nice.
So Jackie's going to take the dogs while we go in the. We got worked out.
So Hugh's thinking about coming this year to the meeting as well?
No, Hugh is going to Westonburg.
Oh, gotcha. I haven't seen him in a few years. I need to talk to Hugh.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Hugh about the meeting, but like all of us, Hugh's retired. He's slowing down a little bit. We all have our little health hiccups. You guys are mere, youngsters. I remember going around with Frank at the last meeting I was at with him, and I love Frank, but he was having a hard time getting around at that time.
Frank Biles, he is the. I love Frank. Again, Frank is he's quite the character. He's a background character in a lot of our videos because he just keeps rolling by in his car at the last Maple Society meeting. Frank, I thought was like Frank kills me because I've known Frank for a long time, and he can be gruff, and Frank is a role model and a mentor to us too. And it's so funny because you call Frank and he's elderly at the time. This is 10 years ago, and it's like, well, how are your grafts doing? Well, not so good. I've been skiing in Canada all winter. I thought I was doing good when I was at Westonburg, and I was driving around internationally, and here comes Frank Biles making it across the whole country.
No problem.
He cracks me up. He's I think he might be immortal.
I think the last Maple Society meeting in New Jersey, Pennsylvania area, he actually drove down from Pennsylvania to North Carolina.
From Olympia, Washington. To Pennsylvania, then to North Carolina. Yeah.
I mean, it was insane. I couldn't believe how much driving he was doing. And it was...
He cracks me up.
It's crazy how much he just gets out there and sees everything.
Underrated for Maples, though. I mean, I know Frank's a bigger than life personality, and he can rub some people the wrong way sometimes. But another guy who's probably on the Mount Rushmore Maples who doesn't get enough credit sometimes too.
So I think so. I think he definitely is. And at this particular occasion, I also have my dog with me, but I also have my wife with me, Adele. And you guys know Adele passed last year, but she kind of took care of Frank, and she walked slow with Frank, and Frank and her just, hit up this thing. So by the end of the day, we were invited out for for a week at his house.
Yeah,
and saying, "Oh man, this guy's such a sweetheart."
Well, that certainly speaks to the patience and caringness of your wife, and our condolences there. I know that was such a big thing. We were praying for you and seeing all that online, and but that certainly speaks to her sweet nature. She can,
she loved everybody.
She can take care of Frank.
She loved everybody, and she loved Frank too. And when Frank said something that she didn't like, she said, "You know what? I'm not going to listen to that. We're not going to talk about that." He said, "Oh, okay."
I sat down at a restaurant one time with Frank. We'll get off Frank Biles, but I sat down at a restaurant one time with Frank, and he said, "My name's Frank, and I am." And the people said, "How are your prawns?" And he said, "I had half a mind to come back there and teach you to cook them myself." But that's Frank. You just gotta get what you get. It's fun.
You gotta love the guy. You gotta love the guy.
Now, speaking of admiring things on the web, one thing I admire all the time is all the really cool trees you have in your garden. And will you tell everyone a little bit about where you're gardening and how many Japanese maples or maples you might have in your garden?
So I can tell you where I kind of started gardening, because I was young, and we moved outside of New York City, where my parents had lived, kind of the suburbs, and there was the house that we were renting came with this old gardener that had been there, his whole life, and he just started teaching me about, you know, the perennials, what he would put in, you know, the tulips. He would, you know, say this kind is good because it lasts. You know, nowadays you got to buy tulips every year and replant them. But in those days, you could tulips lasted year to year, or at least in Europe, you have to buy them. So, Willard kind of got my love for it going. And in subsequent years, you know, as we had our own house and different rentals, we would always plant a lot. And when we finally bought this place, which was in the end of '91, so this is it's about 30 acres, the property, and it's a old farm. It's about 475 years old, the house.
Wow.
Right. And the people who had lived here, you know, they were poor farmers. They really had, you know, they'd been living, you know, subsistence farming for a long time. And so they had cut down every tree except 3 linden trees, which we think were planted with the house, because linden is lousy firewood. So Tilia doesn't burn, you know. So they left that, but you know, big old oak stumps, huge wild cherry stumps, beautiful trees that had all been cut down and burned, and it was sort of a blank slate. So we said, well, you know, we gotta start thinking about, you know, what we're going to do with this. Otherwise, we're living in an empty field, you know, basically with this house. It took us about 2 years to get all the barbed wire and the cesspits and the, you know, the trash dumps and everything out. And when we did that, we started planting, and you know, we started looking at the books, and it just became clear how much variety there was within maples, you know, and how much interest you could get from originally, I think, like for most people, Japanese maples. You know, that's where I started out saying, wow, look at this. This is nuts, you know. And then there's this one, and it's the same species. Makes no sense. So we started planting, and when we planted some basic trees and started collecting maples, you know, I don't know, probably around 95, 96. And then, like I think a lot of people, you start kind of going a little further and looking at maples. You know, there's more than just Japanese maples, and even within Japan, you know, there are these great maples like Acer macranthum, you know, or Chinoskii, or Diabolicum, you know, and just these fantastic trees that you can plant, and that all have these, you know, great features to have. You know, there's evergreen ones. I'm preaching to the converted, I know, but I get very enthusiastic about it. So yeah, we just kind of went, and you know, the garden kept getting bigger and taking over more fields, and the guy who cuts the hay keeps, you know, looking at me and saying, you know, come on, man. Yeah, so the garden's now about 7 acres. Wow. Planted, and you know, there's new parts and older parts, and the older parts are really starting to come in nice now, and it really makes me wish, you know, the best advice I can give anybody who's got a garden they're building is plant now, don't wait. Yeah. You know, plant as many trees as you can water that first year, because, you know, to get things established. Because if you wait 10 years from now and you say, I'll get that in, you know, I'll get that planted, you're just going to disappoint yourself. So the time is always now. The problem with some of these maples is, of course, getting hold of them. And getting the ones that you want. So some of them have waited, but we're getting there. So how many are in the ground? That's a tough call. It's tough to say, because they're not all listed in the database. and I don't always list. I do a lot of selecting of seedlings, and sometimes I just forget to put them in the database. Sometimes I, say, it's a Japanese maple, it's a species maple, it's another macranthum, so I think there's about 600 in the ground. And then there's probably got to be another 200 in pots, which the idea for me is to get them out of pots and get them in the ground, or sell them or graft onto them, or whatever. I don't plant all of them because that would be insane.
I got to see a small video of your place once. You and Adele have created a masterpiece there. That it is absolutely beautiful. That is the one meeting I mentioned. I missed one meeting, and since '09, I think the one I missed was Normandy. So the one time I haven't been at a meeting was internationally, was actually at your place. I just wasn't in the works that year. But I feel a great sense of loss that I didn't get to come see your garden, because the video I saw had my jaw on the ground drooling. Absolutely phenomenal place.
You guys are invited anytime. You know that we got lots of space.
What part of France are you in?
So we're in Normandy, which is kind of south of the beach. So we're about 40 miles south of the Normandy beaches. If you see where that is, Omaha Beach and all that. So it's a pretty quick drive to get up there, but it's a little bit, just a little bit colder. It's a little, the ground is a little bit different. So we're in about as far south as you can be in Normandy. And it's nice because it's about 2.5 hours from Paris, so it's very convenient. If you got stuff to do in the city, it's pretty cool.
You mentioned a little bit about it, but I know you're gardening with an incredible amount of Acer species. And Tim and I are always singing Acer species praises here in the U.S. I mean, certainly most of our industry in the U.S. is more focused on Japanese maples, and I think there is a greater appreciation for Acer species in Europe. That's something that's always debated and cultivated, and it has a little bit more mystique to it, I think, in a lot of Europe. You turned me onto some great ones. Acer Schneiderianum. I know that's one you're growing in your garden that I think has a lot of commercial value here in the U.S. We're starting to get that one going, but that's one I have to say thank you to you, because I was completely unaware of this maple, and that orange fall color, some of those pictures you have, it's to die for. That there's some ornamental traits there that are just outrageous.
It's amazing, and it is it's very, very late, because it's I don't know if it's really a subtropical maple, because it does grow well here. I had some trouble with it in the beginning with some some of that freezing and Pseudomonas type of infection, but it did recover, and it has when it's in its young years, it has a beautiful bluish color to the bark also, which is interesting. And now that the one that we have is probably the largest one in Western Europe, I think, because it's gotten pretty darn big. It has an amazing striped. I'll send you a picture, but I should have taken a picture to show you. But it has an amazing striped bark. It's almost like a snake bark maple. That's incredible.
I'm really impressed with it.
So you have that, and the fact that it leaves out very late, so it's immune to any kind of spring frost, because it just it leaves out here. It leaves out in late May after pretty much anything except pentaphyllum, and then it's the last tree to color. So when pretty much everything is gone, all of a sudden you have this beautiful pumpkin orange that
I think it's got a lot of interesting qualities to it too. We're doing a lot of selecting in Acer Oliviernum. It's another category for maybe some more heat tolerant, a little bit more hotter climate maples. I absolutely love the ornamental qualities too. I think this year will be the first year we've actually offered it. We've sold a few at open houses, but I think it will be coming up pretty soon. And it's a plant that we'd like to slip those in on people. Most of our people are after cultivars, and they're more cultivar centric on the maples here, but we love slipping in the the rare Acer species. It's something we always are kind of pushing.
And I think people aren't looking enough at plants like Acer snyderianum that are in section palmata. So they're closely related to Acer palmatum. They can be grafted onto Acer palmatum.
Someone with a collection like you, I mean, the possibilities for hybridization in a collection of your size, those seeds are going to be invaluable. There's a lot of cool things that could happen there. And
then you might be able to create more Japanese maples that have a later leaf out time. You might be able to create some unique things by having these influences of other species that make people around the world more able to appreciate maples in different climates.
So I do have some of those from Schneiderianum because I do grow it from seed, not every year, but of course it doesn't seed up every year either, like as they don't always. But it has beautiful samaras too. The samaras are kind of flat and like pink with a nice wing going across. So, but it is related to Oliverianum for sure. And the question is, among the botanists right now, is it distinct? Is it a distinct species? There's a lot of reasons to think it is, but right now it's a little bit of an uphill battle. So we'll see how that one comes out.
They like to reclassify everything every so many years. They don't want to go easy on us nurserymen with our labels. We got to change them.
The thing
isn't it the truth?
The thing that's interesting that makes it confusing is there are different collections of different species all around the world, and not necessarily, the things that are at Westenbert might not necessarily be the exact same as what someone has wild collected and labeled the same thing in, different collections across the world. And so it's always interesting because I'm always like, is it the same thing or is what they're looking at the same thing? And so there's definitely some things. I wish there was a way to, get all that information together, have photos of, this is this, this is this, this is distinctively the same thing versus, this that I had in this collection that was labeled this is the same thing as this. Because I think there's a distinction between the two.
There is the scans, the Jan Delange scans, which you guys have probably looked at. He's at University of Ghent in Belgium, and he worked with Dan. Dan is actually vice chair of the Maple Society of Britain and Ireland now, which I was stupid enough to accept the chair of. So
we're really excited about that. I'm really honestly, that was great news to have you. I was like, hey, that's awesome. It's super exciting to see that continue on and to regrow and to get we need those guys involved and you involved, and what a treasured resource to have a lot of the UK guys, doing more.
Yeah, I think it's important to find that root. I mean, that is actually the root of the Maple Society.
Right.
In the beginning, that's where it started, and those guys like Roy Lancaster, of course, Peter Gregory, Hugh Angus.
Right.
Those were the guys who formed it. I mean, they started to form it, and they had basically been dropped a little bit to the side. So when they decided, I really wasn't involved in the decision, but they decided that there needed to be a renaissance of the Maple Society in Britain and Ireland, and formed a committee, which was when they asked me to come in and sit as the chair. And since then, I have to say it's going really great. So we're back to having really good visits. We have making sure we get contributions in the nursery. We have e-bulletin, a PDF. We have nursery discounts, different things going on. And of course, one of the main things that we've done is really pushed the Cultivar database to become a Maple Society benefit.
Yeah.
And this is a place where I should thank you guys again because your website, I've been kind of doing the research lead on that. And your website has been invaluable just in verifying, things that have happened since Peter wrote the original checklist.
Right.
2008. There's been a lot of developments.
There's been a lot of development since that Peter Gregory and Hugh Angus checklist, and it's one of the best resources. I wish it was still in print, but it's invaluable for. I think we source that as one of our greatest resources when our website goes up for determining if things are the same or if there is a possible likeness. We don't take it as complete word, but we go, well, this is comparative to this. Let's do some research and make sure these two things aren't the same and double list them. So
right.
And I think the database is going to be a great resource for a lot of people going forward too, because it has a lot of that information, and then it's expanded on from there on a lot of the new cultivars. So that'll be a great resource going forward too.
Yeah, so we're we've got, it's kind of a checklist, second edition is how we're looking on it. Electronic. It's based on Peter and Hugh's checklist, but it's updated with, for example, all of your new cultivars that have been introduced are all in there. The last big one I have to do that I'm halfway through is Core Van Gelderen, Van Gelderen and Esveld, which is a lot of fun because Core spells everything his own way. So, of course, if you're listening to me,
he'll be on the podcast soon. We're actually going to have him on soon. Another of my maple heroes. If people are wondering where we go to get our maple superhero fix, it's with guys like Core.
He's a great guy. He's a sweet guy. And,
he's always been gracious with his time with me too.
And he knows his. And he was gracious enough to join our committee. So we will have access to all of Core's photographs.
Nice.
But what we are just finishing up now is Core's is the last big cultivar list. Most of which we already have, but there are a few in there. But what we have now incorporated are Alan Tabler's complete photo library. So that's a huge resource for people to be able to look at. And of course, a lot of work for us, but even more work for Alan because he took these photographs.
What a great guy too. Alan's awesome.
Yeah, I love Alan. And in fact, I just sent him I was lucky enough to receive a lot of Peter's papers, including his first copy of the checklist.
Wow,
with all his notes in it.
When I stayed with him, he had downsized to an apartment when I went and stayed with Peter Gregory. I stayed with him about 4 or 5 days, and I slept on a futon in his library, and I didn't get much sleep because I was up. I was in a little side room, and I was on a futon, and it was basically just surrounded in books, and all I did was, well, I'm going to go look at that book again. And so I'd be up with a flashlight looking at stuff in Peter Gregory's library.
I just sent that to Alan to have, because I have so much. I have all Peter's slides from the Japanese Maples books.
That's awesome.
And I felt like keeping all this stuff was not, I couldn't keep it all. But stuff like the Nakajima books, I will digitize, and then we'll get those online.
Sweet.
So people will be able to, to profit from that stuff.
That's awesome.
When I get to it,
that's awesome. That's phenomenal to hear. Matt and I are always trying to find ways to make things out there for people to see. I know whenever we actually got a copy of one of the original, one of the first copies, like the working copy of the list from Peter and Hugh. Because they'd sent one to Talon Buckholtz, and when Talon Buckholtz came and visited the Maple Society meeting in Asheville, he started sending us tons of stuff from his office because he was like
personal library.
On his personal library, because he was like, guys, I want someone to have this. And this was before we were ever even big enough to
about 10 years
involved in his business.
We were tiny then, and he just wanted us to try to preserve the history. And we're all the time trying to incorporate that stuff into videos so more people can see it. And it's always super exciting to be able to hear of more maple information getting out there. I mean, that's to us is what it's all about, is getting it and making this information easy for people to find. Because, I mean, when, 20 years ago when we were getting into this information was almost impossible to find. And
absolutely.
It's awesome to have more people out there just trying to get this information shared out there. Now, Emery, you are from Europe. Well, you're in Europe, I should say. You're not from Europe.
US.
You're from the U.S., but you're in Europe.
Yeah.
And that means that you've got some European sycamore maples. And you've got some expertise with some European sycamore maples.
I do. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about some of these unusual European sycamore maples. I mean, out here, people, they know Esk Sunset, and that's basically what they know about European sycamore maples. So tell us about some of the other European sycamore maples that you've got experience with there in Europe, because that's just awesome.
So, one of the ones that it's funny because you said maybe you can tell me your 5 favorite maples. So I made a list, and I couldn't stop at 5, because that was ridiculous. So I don't know how many are on the list, but anyway, one of them on the list is a maple called Prince Camille of Rohan, from the Rohan Nursery. Now, I don't know if you guys have that in the States, but it's a like Esk Sunset. It's a purple base, so an Atropurpureum variety sycamore, and it has in the spring it looks kind of similar to Esk Sunset before Esk Sunset gets very pink. You know how pink it gets. It's a little too pink for my personal taste. I have one, of course, but it's in a big garden. Plants that are super loud kind of take attention away from the more subtle parts of the garden, and everyone they beeline for that, and then they kind of miss other stuff. So Prince Camille. It grows into a larger maple, but what it does is, as it goes further into the summer, the top of the leaves get almost a sort of a cream tan color. It's not pink; it's almost cream and tan, and the underside of the leaf gets very, very dark. So when the wind blows on it, you get this flashing of this dark purple and the cream in the sunlight. It's absolutely fabulous. The problem that people get with it is that it's a big tree. It grows into like a lot of these sycamores. They grow into big trees, and so that's the thing. Another great one that I think you must have is Simon Lewis Frere. That's a beautiful tree. It has green undersides of the leaves, so it burns a little more easily. Generally, the ones like if you compare Prince Henry or any of the Puget Pink series. They burn a little less easily in the sun than a maple like Brilliantissimum, which doesn't have the purple undersides. So they're a little more practical in some situations. But there's a packet of them. Simon Lewis Frere is great. Leet's Cottage is another beautiful like Brilliantissimum. There's one called Miracle Rose, which is a bright, darker than Brilliantissimum. Not pink, but a real dark red almost when it first comes out. There's I don't know how many I have, but there's a few of them here.
How's your yellow on green evaluation doing? I know that you had a yellow and green pseudoplatinus seedling, Acer pseudoplatinus seedling you were watching.
Do you see a picture of that?
Oh yeah,
we saw.
Yeah, pretty. The problem with it is that it's pretty up until about mid-June, I called it Sunburst, as an eval name. And I've only grafted one of them, and I'm going to graft some more of it this winter and see how it does. What it seems like is it is super wind sensitive. So as soon as it takes a little bit of wind, the yellow parts just dry out, and you end up with green and sort of brown. So I don't know if that one's good, if it's going to make it or not, but we'll keep playing with it for a little while.
And it's always good to graft it and then see what the grafts do off of it too, because a graft on it may have a better root system than the seedling does. And
that's right.
And so that's part of the valuation process, and then seeing how they perform. And from the photos, though, I look at it and I'm like, that's one that
we're always admiring your collection and dreaming over what. I guess it's equal on in both continents. We look at what the other one has and we go, man, we don't have that one here. That's not fair. We get a lot of that, from some of our European followers, but it's like we understand. We do the same thing.
So you've got numerous seedlings you've been growing for years. Has there been any one particular seedling off of a palmatum or any species that has stood out to you that you really liked?
It's funny. The one that I kind of like the most is one that's not. I've got a lot of different variegated Oridono Nishiki seedlings that I planted. There's a nice dwarf one that has stayed about about a foot, 2 feet, something like that. That's pretty a useful form, potentially. So there's a lot of those. There's various convex leaves or kind of dissected leaves. The one that I really, really like the most as time has gone on is actually one of the first palmatums that I selected. It's not a hybrid. It's clearly not a Shirsoanum or some other kind of hybrid. And it's from a seed that Ed Shin gave me back in 2010. So it's a relatively old tree, and it's been in the ground for 12, 13 years. So it's had plenty of time. It's stayed pretty small, upright. It leafs out with absolutely beautiful dark purple, very small leaves. And it has a I would say aoyagi green bark, but it's even greener. and it stays green even on the big stems. So no stem has ever gone brown yet on it. And as the year goes on, it's just it becomes another green stemmed palmatum that you look at and say, yeah, it's a nice tree. It's got beautiful fall color like so many of them do. But boy, for those 8 weeks where you get that contrast, it's nuts. So I'll probably graft it and see how it does. I've got a lot of rootstock ready to go. So
nice.
Are you getting any of those introduced to the Maple Society or any of the big outlets out there yet?
Yeah, I haven't. Of course, I'm kind of a little old school about waiting, and the net result is I'll probably kick off before I introduce whether they should be or not. But yeah, Cora's offered to introduce a few different things,
nice.
And there are a few people who've said, "Oh yeah, I definitely put that out." But
that's high praises coming from him, though. I mean, if he's agreeing, that's a good cosigner right there.
Once you get it grafted and it continues on those traits, I mean, you've got a set of traits that you start to see that's proven over time. Right. That's the kicker is you get it grafted and get it started evaluation on a grafted set of rootstock, and
Right. Then you start to see what you've really got.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't have a good source for here in France although I could get it from Belgium or Holland for understock. A lot of people here were getting the understock from, sadly missed Dick Vandermaat, another, great loss to the maple world.
Oh, for sure. He was a huge mentor to Tim and I as well, and super kind. We'd ask him to be on here, and he said, why don't I just tell you what I want to talk about and you talk about it? I don't want to be on camera, but shy guy and his English is phenomenal. I don't know why, it's a lot better than my Dutch.
he
shy and
I did his grafting day, right. And he's just phenomenal. Phenomenal.
We met him at that 2009 Maple Society meeting. And, I was still going to local tailgate markets. And a lot of times when people would kind of one up me, I guess some older guy would come by the tailgate market and go, "Who taught you how to graft?" My answer was Dick Vandermaat of Holland. Who?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
There's not a better reference.
Right.
So I don't know what a lot of people over here are going to do.
Yeah.
To be honest, because he grafted for so many places that I can think of, I'm not going to mention any names, but I can think of some nurseries in England that I don't see how they're going to stay in business.
Yeah.
Because they were getting
big influential guy, and another one of those Mount Rushmore of maple people too.
Yeah, for sure.
Great introductions, great business guy. Just he'll be missed for sure. He was a big influence on maple, the whole maple world. I mean, here we are, two guys in the mountains of Western North Carolina, and he had a big impact on our careers too. So.
Yeah, well, that shows you on everybody. I mean, I can't think of anyone. There are a lot of young nurseries in France now, which is a good thing. That we didn't have any when I was starting to buy maples. You couldn't buy a Sangokaku in France. Forget about it. Any of the more common Orange Dream. This was before you guys, you probably don't have them. Do you have a lot of rooted cutting maples?
We do a few specifically for bonsai, but most of our maples are grafted. Like if we're going to do like a set of DeSojo or Nishigawa, something specific, Arakawa, if we have a specific plan for something that we want to do just that year, in rooted cuttings possibly, but for the most part we do trees for the landscape. So I always tell our bonsai guys, hey, buy a grafted tree, plant it, because it's going to do better in the landscape. And if you're exclusively looking for bonsai content, you can air layer and do unlimited rooted cuttings and air layers from that plant. So you're better to start off with a grafted one. So we do sometimes, but we tend to encourage the grafted stuff as a better source.
And that's what I hope we continue to have here in the United States is people realizing that the grafted material is great for the landscape rather than getting in trying to do rooted cutting for the landscape, which can have some long-term issues.
There's certainly some cultivars that do pretty well from it. I mean, people are like, "Oh, I've rooted a maple." I'm like, "You're talking to a guy who's rooted thousands and thousands of maples." I'm not saying it can't be done. They're like, "Well, I did it." Right. Yeah, of course it can be done, but on a commercial standpoint,
there are a few examples. There's a company here in Holland who have introduced a number of cultivars. I think there's which you asked me what they're selling it as, and I don't remember, and it doesn't matter either. How's that? But anyway, they invented a process for rooting cuttings, and they spent $30 million on a factory, 30 million euros on a factory, which magically produces and just cranks them out, and then they sell them in the big box stores for $10 before they get not watered and go on sale because they're all dried out, and then you can buy one for like $250. So a lot of people are buying these, really fairly nasty, sorry fellas, rooted cuttings.
I understand. It's inferior to a graft. I always let people know here too. It's not going to perform. what you see here in the States, and there's always guys that find a way to do it because they can do it cheaper or they can't graft. And there'll be nurseries that will go through and they'll produce several thousand of something. And then after 7 years in the field grown process, that yield, those nurseries tend to go out of business over time because that yield, they'll start putting them in the ground, they'll start trying to grow them off. And over time, they just keep decreasing their yield. And you see them at least 50% losses after 7 years. It's a hard business to run.
And then it starts getting 50% after each continuous year at some point.
It can be pretty tricky.
And then you got to realize if those losses are happening in the nursery, they're also happening to the customers. And so then it's just giving a bad name for Japanese maples by not having them on a grafted root system that is not clonal. It's stronger. It makes them a little more vigorous and easier to grow for the customer.
It's been about 5 years, maybe a little longer since they introduced this new method. And, so the wrap, as you guys say, in the industry is somewhere between 7 and 10 years. They're all going to start to, crap out, basically. Some of them won't, but a lot of them will. And we're kind of waiting to see, what's going to happen with that as time goes on. So, or whether their process, is actually going to.
Well, there's certainly some cultivars that lend themselves easier to rooting. I mean, Veritrees even had a list of maples he thought were more likely to root and to do well. And so I think a lot of times when you're closer to the straight species, some of those do better. But you just can't beat a good seed-grown rootstock for the durability, for its ability to weather, be more disease-resistant. There's a reason why it's been done that way. I'll have guys argue with me all over, that that's not the real thing. You have to root it. And I'm like, I don't know if you visited my friends in Japan, and my friends in Holland. This isn't the preferred method, right. Like this is it's done this way for a reason. It's not just it's not something I come up with because I'm a clever grafter who wants to trick you.
I think the other thing too is, these are they're not really the same plant. They're the same cultivar, but they're not the same plant as a grafted tree, and it's a fantastic tree for bonsai. It's a good tree for a container plant if you're going to treat your plants constantly and try to prevent them with fungicides from catching funguses. And using, soils that are artificial soils like, pine bark fines and things of that nature. Right. You can avoid having this and have a phenomenal container plant. I think that's sort of the idea. It's just a different tree than the tree that you're going to put out in the landscape. And I think people start to get those things confused because one is more like a container plant or an annual type, approach to a Japanese maple, and then one is a
plant.
And then one's a tree in the landscape that people are going to enjoy for years to come. So
I think that's exactly right. It really is. It really is almost like an annual. You buy your plant, you enjoy it for a season, you leave it here, we get a ton of rain. Probably you guys do too.
Oh yeah.
And, you leave it out in the rain over the winter and that thing is going to be dead. There's no way that it's going to sit in its container, no matter how much drainage you've got, and room for the holes to, to drain out. It's not going to be able to live through that.
And certainly some types are going to just be complete wimps. I mean, don't be rooting. You can root a lace leaf. I've certainly done it, but it's not going to be of much commercial value, which the majority of our industry still is lace leaf Japanese maples. That's the most popular tree generally, or at least amongst our top 20 in sales. 5 to 10 of those at the top are going to be lace leaf varieties.
So let me ask you a question. When you're selecting a new lace leaf for a cultivar, how long do you let it get on its own roots? How old do you let it get? Because I've had a ton of them that they'll get to 5 or 10 years. They look great, and then all of a sudden, boom.
They can be pretty weakly rooted. So what we try to do, now we don't introduce everything we evaluate because we'll evaluate thousands of trees, but we try to get it into that graft situation as quickly as possible. So with a lace leaf, I've had lace leaves that were grafted second year from seed and then lost the seedling just because they never developed great roots on their own. I mean, you think of things like red filigree lace. that's not going to be great on its own roots. So if you find something, very fine tuned, it can be a phenomenal, durable plant when grafted. But on its own roots, it can be quite a wimp. So we try to graft those immediately. Now, what we do at our nursery is we have a 5 and 7 process. So whenever we're naming something, we try to think of the 5 things closest to it. So, for instance, if it had a green bark, obviously we'd throw Al Yagi in there and we'll compare that. And what we try to do is we try to tell how it's better or worse than those 5 things. And if you can't do that, stop then, right? If you have no answers to why it's better, there's no reason to keep going forward. So we do the 5 and 7. Then we evaluate it for 7 years. So we'll send it up north, down south, to the West Coast, and then kind of get everybody's feedback for 7 years to kind of see if it's panned out commercially and it's looked interesting in if these different locations for a 7-year period. And
that's grafted for 7 years. So you probably got 2 or 3 years of it on its own roots. So you're really evaluating for close to that 10-year time frame.
Right. So we go 7 years since we've grafted it to try to just make sure that it's doing what we want it to do. But with lace leaves, we try to graft them as quickly as possible because I've had some things that I thought were well worthy of the nursery trade. It was early on in the process, but things that shock and awe you and you get excited about them, and then lace leaves just sometimes they don't make it on their own roots. They don't develop as strong of a root system. So
yeah, that's great advice, and I'm gonna take it because this is something that I usually always kind of feel like I don't want to graft first year wood that hasn't really ripened up. And sometimes because of the lack of heat that we get, we can have, we could still be in the 50s in late June and it just never really warms up. So the wood sometimes has a hard time, hardening enough to.
Do you mostly do summer grafts or do you also do any winter grafting?
No, I only do winter grafts.
Okay.
I only do winter grafts.
I find that you can be a little more, less selective in winter grafting on your sign-wood. Like sometimes you can get a more thin toothpick piece to take. Summer grafting, you kind of have to have a more viable, healthy, hardened off rootstock and a more viable, healthy, hardened off scion, thicker, healthier. Where sometimes I'll take more risks in my winter grafting to get a duplicate because I can just get a small little toothpick, and as soon as I've got a duplicate on a good root system, I've got it saved. So I'll take a little bit more risk sometimes in my winter prop, or I'll save a few even tiny scions that I know, hey, I can catch this one in the winter and get that little scion going.
And you got to tell me, how many trees are you grafting now?
Well, Tim and I do a lot of social media stuff, so we've slowed down on the actual production. Before, a few years ago, Tim and I were the entire grafting force. So
is that right?
Yeah, we just till recently, if we were doing something, Tim and I were grafting it completely. In a really busy year, Tim and I can do maybe 20 to 30,000 grafts between us and our dad. We've long since kind of outgrown our own production means. So right now at Buckholz, to give you an idea, summer grafting, they're doing about 60,000 on palmatum and about 20,000 other summer grafts, and
shooting for 70,000 if possible.
During the winter, they were probably very similar, close to 40,000 to 50,000, including conifers. So there's a lot going on year round. We try to do most of our conifer production in the winter now. We're actually cutting summer grafts too.
We're actually cutting sign wood. We cut sign wood yesterday that they're cutting leaves off today, and next day airing it to Buckholz Nursery across the country for grafting right now.
We're actually going to be hiring somebody. I'm doing all this social media stuff and podcasts now, so I don't get to be there grafting as frequently as I'd like anymore. That is one of my favorite parts of the business. But we're actually planning to kind of revamp a little bit of our production facility here, and we're hoping by next year to be doing in the 30 to 40,000 range again of palmatum grafts here next summer. So that's kind of the goal, to keep both those facilities really turning out numbers. But our numbers are much smaller here now compared to Buckholz, is the honest answer.
Right. Well, you look what he's been supplying. This just brings me back, though, to, the what you were talking about before of kind of continuing the knowledge within, you know, the maple community. And I think that that's something that we're in TMSBI, the Maple Society in Britain and Ireland, we're also very tuned into. Is what we want to do is make sure that you know, the knowledge from people like Core, from people like Talon or Frank, or Ed Shin, you know, Alan Tabler, that we can get all of that continued, because you know, otherwise what happens is, you know, hey, none of us live forever,
right?
And the truth is that you know, in order to have that continuation, I'm not talking about the Maple Society, but the maple and nursery community,
right,
and the ability to, you know, to retain these cultivars, and the some, you know, some of which I'm sure for you guys require special methods. You know, goodness knows, Yano had all kinds of special cultural methods that he was doing for a lot of his trees. You know, so that's why I think a lot of us were really, really pleased to hear about, you know, when you guys came to the arrangement with Buckles out there, because it seems like a really nice synergy that is all upside.
We'll be coming in on 1 year at the end of September, early October, so we'll be officially owners for a year here pretty soon, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been challenging running businesses on two coasts. We have our hands full with Mr. Maple, but it's been a worthwhile endeavor. I'm really glad it was one of those things. We prayed about it, and it said, this just seems like it's meant to be. It kind of just showed up and made sense, and couldn't not do it. That was one of those situations.
All the luck in the world for that, and I hope you make some money out of it.
Yeah, we're working on that. We're working on that. It's a lot of startup costs, because so it's a lot of. It's a lot of investment back into that place. So we're certainly putting a lot of money back into our goals to have, you know, I went there first in 2009, and we've got a great staff there. First off, our staff is phenomenal. And our goal is to get it back to kind of its 2009 size. And we're ahead of pace. So we've really been ramping things up. We'll have to have a Maple Society get together out there. I'd be really proud to show people what we're working on, but we've really been ramping things up out there.
So, Emery, I know that you've got a lot of knowledge with species, obviously, but also you do have a lot of Japanese maples. What are some underappreciated Japanese maples that you don't see around in the nursery trade enough?
Well, you know, the one I'm going to go right to, because it's one of my favorite maples, and I can never understand. I can never understand why it doesn't get a lot of credit, and that is Utsusemi. Utsusemi is such a beautiful maple. It has, you know, gorgeous large leaves, beautiful green. You know, in the summer, it takes a beautiful natural form. It deals well with varying lights. You know, it does great in the shade, but it does great in the sun too. And the fall color is just nuts. I mean, it is nuts. There are some years where every color possible is there at the same time. You know, every yellow, red, orange, green, purple, you know, it's all over this maple at the same time. And you just look at it and you say, oh my God, how did that happen? You know, and that's the answer, how it happened. But, you know,
yeah, fall color on that one will knock your socks off.
I think Utsusemi is heavily underrated. It's that Acer Aminum style leaf. And
which I love.
Yeah. And I mean, I've even heard, you know, some people talking about how well some of those aminums do in some of those extreme cold climates, because they're just very durable. And the aminums just get these thick trunks, thick branching, and the leaves on them are they're just stoic. They just stand out there, and they're just something that you really appreciate. And they make a statement in the garden.
They're almost cartoonishly what you think of as a Japanese maple. Like, it's real defined.
it's architectural.
Yeah.
You know? So when you're going through, you know, I plant regular old species palmatum, which make beautiful, you know, nice trees. And, you know, and they also have beautiful form. There's nothing to not like about them. I actually find that as opposed to the cultivars, the species palmatums have much longer color, typically. They color up over a 5-6 week period. And, you know, the color sort of evolves slowly. And so they give you a nice long show. But with the small leaves, they're sort of feathery, you know, like any number of, you know, palmatum cultivars. They don't make they make sort of especially for someone who's kind of blind like me, they make sort of more of a background wash. Whereas these amoenums, you know, it's a big architectural leaf. Another one I love along the same line, although the leaves aren't as large as Utsusemi, is Hogyoku, which has that beautiful pumpkin orange, almost we were talking about Schneiderianum earlier. Almost that sort of color. It's not really quite the same, but it just goes boom, and you've got this
rich, bold color.
Orange, rich color. Yeah, that's a gorgeous tree.
I know another one you're a big proponent of is Myrte.
Myrte.
Myrte, yeah.
Yeah, one of Core's daughters, actually.
That was one of the funnest things about going there. I was like meeting the family. I was like, I know you. I got your tree. What's your name? I know you. I got your tree. What's your name? Oh, I know you. I got your tree.
Yeah, Myrte is a beautiful tree. It's a more of a Matsumura, actually. So a form of amoenum. I don't know how up you keep with the latest taxonomy on Japanese maples. One of the things we have to do is go through in the cultivar database and update all of the species, which is something I'm really not looking forward to doing.
So are you going into Acer Matsumura, or are you adopting Core's method where it's the like reticulatum group, or
are you going into what Japan was? Oh, my goodness!
So you're never going to be done.
So we're definitely Core's grouping is the official grouping of the Maple Society. So we're kind of obligated to do that whether we wanted to or not. But I think it's still a good thing because it does let the consumer have an idea of what they're getting. You know, if you say it's a pine bark group, you know, they're going to know what that means.
Right.
Or you know, Atropurpureum group, they're going to know what that means.
For us, there's always a bit of a struggle. Like say for instance, our friend Dan Crowley, if he reclassifies Acer longipes gold coin, you know, the species of that, we feel a need to also still not let our customers know that they're, you know, we could reclassify that, but the people who bought Acer longipes gold coin 10 years ago, they're going to come back and they're going to buy Acer cappadoscum subspecies, you know, Syndicum.
It's actually amplum.
Amplum gold coin.
Just not to correct you, but it's actually amplum.
So they're going to keep doing this, though. They're going to have 4 of these in their garden, and they're going to have each generation reclassification.
The reason we say that, we were walking in NJ Acer's garden, Ed Shin's garden, with Dan Crowley and Core. And,
is that right?
And Dan walked up, and Core said, "What species do you think this gold coin is?" And he started looking at it, and he's like, "Well, it keys out for Acer cappadoscum variety Syndicum." So,
no, really?
Yeah,
it does not.
Yeah, that's what Dan said.
Laugh because that's what he said at NJ Acers. Funny thing about that place, a lot of the Europeans were like, "Oh, too much variegation," and then by the end of it, they were like, "I kind of get it." All the gaudy, flashy variegation of the heads.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I actually try not put in too much variegation, but there's nothing you can say about
it's awesome.
about NJ Acer's garden that's not good.
It's shock and awe of just the best.
Shock and awe. It's beautiful. But I love the fact that in spite of all the shock and awe, he's got that big lawn,
right.
you know, to rest your eyes on, and you can walk around, and and you've got this background, the green. I'm a big fan of lawns, sadly, because I spent a lot of time mowing mine. But
Ed's place is phenomenal. It's one of the places that
I said to say that we were literally converting some of the never variegated guys.
Yes,
with that place.
The species only
you're
people.
Winning me over here.
The species only people, which there's a whole group of that in the Maple Society as well, and. Those people were like, I kind of get why people, like these ornamental trees, why they like trees that have a little bit of flair to them.
So, but to get back to my point, I commercially, I feel an obligation to still, it gets a little ridiculous on our website, but I have to be like, formerly known as, it's like Prince, it's the artist formerly known as Longipes. But yeah, I kind of feel this obligation so the consumer doesn't feel this need to find a new Arium, right? Because there's so many different Ariums out there. Say we start to reclassify the species on certain Ariums, it could get quite confusing for the customer.
The first thing I got to do is make a note to give Dan a hard time about that Cappadocium subspecies Sinicum. The thing about, where did gold coin come from? It came from a seed bed, and so that means we really don't have any idea, So Core initially said, or maybe it was his dad, said, "Oh, this is a Longipes subspecies amplum, gold coin," but maybe it doesn't. It doesn't color up the same way as a Cappadocium aureum does, and I grow a lot of them from seed. Actually, there was
that's a great plant
supermarket, too. A supermarket planted a whole stand of them in the middle of a parking lot, and there's no other trees around, so they only have each other. So I go to this Intermarché. It's called the supermarket, and I call my Intermarché line of golden Cappadociums that are always nice trees.
Nice.
But they don't know what it is. It's probably a hybrid. At Esveld, they want to name it something so they can sell it,
right?
Is logical. So that's what they came up with. I think the current idea is that it really is an amplum because of the way
we actually have it listed on our website as amplum, and then it says like
Longipes and
has also been known as Longipes. I laugh because I believe we had Jan's key, and it did key out that way as Cappadocium subspecies Sindicum, I think, by the key at the Maple Society event. So if there's so many different rules you can play by to get to different answers.
It was funny because Dan was speaking at the Maple Society meeting on the Sino-Botanical Expedition, and specifically some specific trees in the collection that almost all of them keyed out as Cappadocium variety Sinicum. And so when we were walking through NJ Acers, and he said,
kind of being smart, Alex, going, I know what this is.
When he said it keyed out as, he thought it might key out as variety Sinicum, Matt and I just about lost it. It was like, oh man, another one. But
stay tuned for a good article from Dan in the upcoming newsletter on his trip with Doug Justice.
Wonderful.
Out to Japan to observe Acer amamiense, which they had to climb up cliffs. There's only about 15 or 12 or 15 trees left. This is the Diabolicum cousin, that you guys know. Do you have that in the States?
Not currently.
I'll bet Tony Ayala has one.
I bet we can find somewhere to get our hands on one.
We've had Doug on the podcast a few times, and one of the things I love about it, we do a lot with collectors, and even yourself being on here, I love opening people up to new things because a lot of people may be newer collectors, and it was fun to show them that side of plant collecting. And we were like, we leaned in pretty hard. We're like, Douglas Justice is like the Indiana Jones of plant collecting. We sold hard, but it really is. Like, I get fired up listening to him.
Guys do.
When I go to his presentations, and guys like him and Dan Crowley, it's like, man, it's cool stuff. It's fun stuff.
Like, they're hiking out in these crazy wildernesses with crazy wildlife, trying to identify these plants on expeditions, having to deal with, local customs, local things they have to deal with, local rules and regulations. I mean, it really is a lot like Indiana Jones.
Where I get excited is where those things have more ornamental qualities, because they find things all the time too where I'm like, that's different. That could actually serve a purpose in the landscape too. So not only preservation, but
this is a tree that's less showy. I just saw the flowers for the first time this spring. Male flowers, unfortunately, because as you guys know, but maybe other people don't, this particular section of maples is about 1 in 5 females. So, or 1 in 8, something like that, depending on the species. So it's very easy to get males, and it's a lot harder to get a propagating tree, which is why I'm growing so many diabolicums right now. I have about 7 diabolicums waiting to declare, so that I can find out which the female is. Now, I have 3 in the ground, but
now for our listeners, do you want to give some people a warning on why Acer diabolicum might be so diabolical?
Well, the technical reason is because it has devil's horns on the maple seed, the samara, the key. It's the only one that has little horns that came out, and someone thought that was a sign of the devil, I suppose.
It's a cool plant. I wish you didn't have to have a male and a female. It's hard to get a seeding set of those unless you have a grove going on too. So production can be tricky with that one, but man.
And I will throw that warning out there too. Do wear your gloves if you're collecting seed on Acer diabolicum.
I've got stuck with one before. It's got a little fish hook on it. It can get you.
That's the horn. That's
Felt like the devil when it was hanging in my finger. I know that. I'm grabbing seeds.
We're running around. We're like, can we collect some seed? Because we're just novices collecting as many species as we could, trying to learn. And
this is Japan?
No, this was actually probably at the National Arboretum. They don't really typically allow it, but we were doing some seed germination tests for one of the curators. And yes, they were very diabolical.
They were diabolical to pick. Yeah, they're hairy too. They're kind of funny. They've got a whole hairy top thing on them.
Oh yeah, interesting plant. I think it's a good plant. I wish they were easier to seed source.
It's a beautiful. I've never seen the female flowers, so I can't say what they look like. But I've always heard that the male flowers are showier, as they often are in the plant world. And it's one of the I won't say one of the rare maples, because a lot of maples have beautiful flowers, especially in the species maples. But Japanese maples also very, very pretty flowers, I think.
There's a lot of acers that should be selected for flowers. I think that's another frontier of evaluation. There's some gorgeous maple flowers. I mean, you don't think of Japanese maples as flowering plants, but they do. But there are some species where the flowers, oh my gosh.
Well, diabolicum is one of those. It's got these beautiful red pendulous flowers that are really a bright scarlet red. It's got a pretty nice long flowering period, and it's a showpiece in the spring. It looks like a red cloud,
Oh yeah.
So, and it's a Japanese maple.
Well,
remember that.
It's from Japan.
Let me close out here by asking you a little bit about the best way. I know you're a big proponent of the Maple Society. We do have some listeners in the UK and all around Europe. What's a good way for them to get involved?
Well, we're always looking for volunteers. First of all, to help with things like event organization or any of the things that we do. We're looking for people with experiences to tell us about them and to share their gardens with us, so that we can keep our touch on the pulse of what people are doing. We meet a lot of people at plant shows where our various nursery running members go and talk about the society. So we pick up members that way. And the thing to do now, which is another benefit that that was promised for a long time, which we've brought forward, is the aside from the cultivar database, which is a great benefit, which you get when you join, you have all of the newsletters going back to 1990. And there are some newsletters that are missing because in 1991, no one kept a copy, or for whatever reason. But we have some of the very first ones also, and I think we're complete from like 94, 95 on.
Wow!
And there is so much information. It's just such an interesting experience to browse through there, and you learn about, in terms of cultivars, where some of these cultivars are coming from. You learn about people's own observations about the species maples. You get the maple profiles that Peter Gregory was writing back in those days. Every issue is just packed full of stuff. And if I had more time, I would be, rereading them from start to finish instead of just, occasionally going back. But I've actually found, searching through for the cultivar database, trying to find cultivar origins, and it's fascinating stuff. So there are a lot of great benefits. There are a lot of things that people can be involved in. Coming up, private tour of Westenbert. Not too many people get that. We were just at I'm sorry, it's going on. Maybe we were at Board Hill, and which is a beautiful old garden, and I can't think. I'm on a memory gap, but the botanical garden for Kew Garden.
Oh yeah.
Wakehurst Place, which is I'm trying to convert. It would be about a 3,000 acre botanical garden.
Wow.
It's one of these, English lord, decided to build a garden over 3,000 acres. Back whenever. And, these places, when you get a chance to go through these places with a guide and get, the maples, the trees, the history, it's just it's an experience that you won't get anywhere else. And I think it's true in the U.S. as well. Just, putting in a word for the North American Maple Society. I'm coming over to speak at the meeting in November, and which I'm greatly looking forward, and have to figure out, have to write something down that I'm going to say yet. But that's that's another problem. But we're going to go to the Scott Arboretum. We're going to go to the Morris. And there will be tours that we're going to go to NJ Acer's Arboretum. These are places that you don't get to go and get a real insider's look at every day. Mm-hmm. So just for that sort of benefit alone, it's worth joining.
Heck yeah. Thank you for what you're doing, keeping the Maple Society going in the UK. Valuable resource of just super knowledgeable people there, and it's so good to see a resurgence there, and I appreciate you heading that up. That was near and dear to our heart, especially visiting Peter and everybody, and it's good to see the resurgence there.
And it's just awesome seeing everything. Matt and I, we were both president of the North American branch of Maple Society for a number of years, hosting, putting on the meetings, everything we could do here, and it's just awesome to see the Maple Society starting to flourish more and more worldwide. So it's just. That's something that's really important to us. It's really my pleasure, and I hope that the Maple Society has been a little bit in the doldrums, as we know. Not so much in the U.S., although it was for a little bit. But now the point for us is to really bring that worldwide recovery, back into place. And I think there's some things happening in Europe now that are promising. So I think that we're going to do that. And as I said, it's my pleasure to be able to facilitate that.
and to talk to you guys today.
Hey, Emery, thanks for hopping on here today, man. We greatly appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe to the Mr. Maple Show. We air these on all your favorite podcast platforms. We also air the video component to these on Sunday evenings on our YouTube channel, the Mr. Maple Show at 8 p.m. You can hop in that live chat. There's a lot of fun Maple people in that community as well. We'd love to see you in there. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.